Pursuant to order, I now call Senator Madigan to make his first speech, and I ask honourable senators that the usual courtesies be extended to him. I call Senator Madigan.
Thank you, Mr President. Congratulations on your re-election as President of the Senate. And before anything else, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the staff of the Senate, who, like you, have been both patient and professional in helping me accustom myself to this new role. It's only been 8 weeks and already I've come to realise that the Senate would not be able to function without the tireless efforts of those dedicated people. Mr President, there is an expression, it's been a long time between drinks. And for the Democratic Labor Party, I cannot think of a more apt and description of our re-emergence into federal arena. For me personally, I can honestly say that the last 12 months of my life have been a surreal experience. 12 months ago, I was paying the bills by, amongst other things, forging pinch bars for Munro Engineering's post drivers, for those in the rural community would know, while campaigning for the Senate on the side. After a series of lengthy discussions with many people, my wife Teresa was convinced that I should stand for the Senate, but the chances of my winning were slight. At about 11 p.m. on election night, Anthony Green, wearing a puzzled look on his face, announced, we appear to have a DLP senator. I imagined that all the junior journalists would be searching Wikipedia for some reference to this new and obscure group. Teresa came to me, gave me a whack in the back of the head and said, "So much for your predictions." For what my wife, Teresa, and my children Lucy and Jack have had to put up with then and now, and will probably have to put up with for some years to come, I'm truly grateful and apologetic. To my mother Patricia, my late father John, I give thanks for having been raised in a loving and supportive home. To my grandparents, John, Hilda, Seymour and Myrtle, my siblings Catherine, Luke and Mark, as well as my wife's family and the members of my extended family across Australia, and to all my friends, especially Richard Rigby and Kevin Flintoff, I would like to express my appreciation for the support they have given me. To the presentation sisters and the Christian brothers, especially Brother McManus, Brother McDonough, Brother Ward and Brother McGlade, I would sincerely like to thank them for their wonderful guidance, prayers and patience they have given me over the years. To Tom Colmo, Denny Wheelerhan, Carl Pedersen, Lance McAnally, Malty, Harry Rossetti, Jim Baxter, Gus Henderson, the blacksmiths, foundrymen, wheelwrights of my childhood, I offer my deep and heartfelt thanks for their revealing the skills and wonders of their craft to a wide-eyed young lad. To Frank Pocock, Shane Taylors, my masters and mentors at the Victorian Railways Newport workshops, where as a proud member of the AMWU I did my apprenticeship. I give my sincere thanks and appreciation for sharing with me the skills, disciplines and knowledge of our trade. And lastly, I'd like to give special thanks to my great-great-grandfather Antonio Salvador Dominguez for jumping ship in Port Phillip 140-odd years ago. I'm sure at that time he would never have believed that one of his great-great-grandsons of one of Australia's early boat people would rise to the office of senator. From the Victorian Railways to my blacksmith's forge at Hepburn Springs in the central Victorian highlands, I now find myself representing the people of Victoria and Australia in the Senate. As the Victorian Senate candidate for the Democratic Labor Party, my election was far from a foregone conclusion. Fortunately, the people of Victoria, the DLP members and a group of determined smaller parties, demanding better representation and accountability from the majors, thought otherwise. Through the dedication, prayers and incredible hard work of so many true believers in the Labor movement, stalwarts such as Billy and Kath O'Connell of East Trentham and the late Max and Eileen Crockett of Geelong, the Democratic Labor Party achieved a remarkable feat. The DLP has been referred to as the party of the last, the lost and the least in Australian society. We were the first party to call for an end to the White Australia policy, to seek equal pay for equal work, the vote for 18-year-olds, equity in education funding, and many other conditions that Australians now take for granted. Our anti-dumping policy, placing the onus of proof on the overseas competitor rather than the local producer, has largely been addressed by the work of Senator Nick Xenophon, who has done his best to address the plight of the Australian worker and Australian family. The drug problem is a scourge on our society, and apart from the devastation wrought on families and individuals, it causes untold harm to our economy and our industries. I believe a nationwide campaign must be considered and will be examining ways in which to introduce a compulsory detoxification and rehabilitation of addicts of illegal drugs. I could go on about legislation, but there will be plenty of days for that in this chamber. During my time here, there will no doubt be a number of controversial bills proposed. I do not intend to be deliberately controversial simply for a few cheap headlines, but on some issues I cannot be complicit in my silence. I am a senator representing the state of Victoria, the state that in 2008 passed the worst abortion laws in the Western world. They would be the worst in the entire world, but we can be proud of the fact that in this matter, Victoria is not quite as bad as the current occupiers of Tiananmen Square. These laws have been described as the most inhumane laws ever passed in this country. Some members on both sides of the House opposed them. Unfortunately, not enough. In the last few weeks, I've had thousands of emails on the live export trade. I was sickened by the sight of animals treated so inhumanely, but what I will never understand is how people can so easily turn away from the even greater suffering we cause to our own children. Life at every stage is precious. No joy comes from a violent loss of life. I urge those senators who are unfamiliar with the scope of the Victorian laws to examine them in the hope they are never repeated in other states and may one day be repealed. Everywhere I go, I meet Australians who feel they have lost their voice and that no politician from either side of the fence could give a damn about their future or the future of their families and communities. Year after year, workers, families, farmers and small businesses are alienated by the decisions of successive governments that allow and apparently encourage the easy sell-off of Australian companies, Australian jobs and Australia's future. Every year, the ordinary Australian, that's the people we are supposed to represent and defend, loses more and more control of their land and its resources. These ordinary Australians actually own this country, not us, their elected representatives, not the multinational corporations, not the overseas buyers of our resources, our farms and our future. We are the representatives of the Australian people, not their masters, and yet decision after decision made in this parliament strips the Australian people of the ownership of their own country. We rightly make laws protecting the ownership of land for the Indigenous people of this country, but we seem incapable of making laws that will actively protect the resources, industry and land of the Australian people as a whole. Our people are told again and again that we are short-sighted if we don't embrace the supposed level playing field of global economics and the free trade system. This level playing field looks more like a ski slope to most Australians. Australian businesses pay superannuation, workers' compensation, award wages and a dozen other costs incurred to give our workforce a safe and secure environment. How many of our competitors incur the same costs? How many of them use workers as grist for the mill with no safety provisions, no superannuation, no leave, and wage levels barely high enough to meet daily costs? Our manufacturing sector is under siege. A siege as great as any we fought in past wars. This week we see BlueScope Steel going under with the loss of over 1,000 jobs. Say it quick enough and it's easy, 1,000 jobs. But it's not 1,000 jobs, is it? It's 1,000 families. It's the community these thousands live in, the shops, the schools and the small businesses that rely on their money to keep going. 1,000 jobs, families, communities, another statistic. But at least the directors of BlueScope can sympathise with them while they holiday in France or Hong Kong or anywhere their bonus dollars buy them more. If we are not making decisions that make the lives of Australians better, then we should at least make sure we don't make them any worse. A country is what a country makes. The great economies of the world have strong manufacturing